Yep.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you. Ooh. I wasn't sure if I was going to make this in time, but here we are. Um, yeah, I'm joining you all from Keystone, Colorado. So I was out there snowboarding all day, and then yeah, just got back in time for this tasting. So here we are. How's everyone doing? What's new? How was everyone Thanksgiving? Anything fun or anything terrible happened during Thanksgiving? Like a family drama that was fun? Julia, Dan, I see you're back from Paris
Yeah,
or
we were in
France.
Paris. There was also family drama there, just to in case.
Yeah, wouldn't expect anything less.
Right. Just because you're in Paris doesn't mean that can't follow you.
Yeah.
But at least you have it with some really nice wine and a pile of croissants. So
Yeah. You can take the family out of US, but you can't take US out of the family. I don't know. That's weird. That didn't work. But anyways. Cool. Anyone else? Any memorable Thanksgiving? Anything you ate? Anything you drank? Any disaster of a cooking disaster that happened? Or achievement?
We had that
I drank all.
post flirtation red that we had.
Uh-huh.
That went really well with Thanksgiving.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Perfect. Yeah. Yeah, that's a good Thanksgiving win for sure. Yeah, I don't have the picture with me, but we drank a lot of wine. I drank a lot of wine. The next day I was like a shell of a human.
How did your pie turn out?
See, so to that point, this is what I was going to say, that I was so drunk by the end of the night that I don't remember tasting the pies. So I don't have a reference point of my pies that I made. So I have to make them again just to see how they worked out. That's how drunk I was. So there we are.
I guess you achieved something.
Yeah.
How's the snow? Is it great?
Oh, just it's incredible. There's no one here. I've never
So
seen
jealous.
any of the ski resorts here this empty or any ski resorts ever.
I mean, you're going to an off-brand one, though. You know what I mean?
Oh, I mean, it's not just Keystone. I was at Vail yesterday. I was
Oh,
at
you were?
Breckenridge the day before. Like, there's nobody here. It's like right after Thanksgiving. It's like,
yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
So
it's
jealous.
like today we had a few more people, but yesterday, literally for like 3 hours. I mean, I was also in the backside of the mountain, in the kind of the outback, but there's not a single soul. Like for 3 hours, I just snowboarded by myself. Like it was unbelievable.
Amazing.
Yeah.
So the back bowls are open already. That's how much snow.
Not all of them. It's still only like 50% open. But it's so big that it's just like,
Oh, so jealous.
So
I'm going at the beginning of January. Hopefully more will come.
It's kind of weird not seeing people. But yeah,
it's also scary because you're like, I hope I don't die. No one's around.
Right, exactly. If anything happens, I don't know if anybody will ever find me. Yeah, there's that for sure. Anyways, let's get started. Welcome everyone. Welcome to the finally, we put a Georgian box together. So welcome to the Georgian month. Yeah, there's a lot of weird wines, even if you're like a conventional wine drinker, just stylistically, Georgia just has a very unique style of wines. But also within Georgia, I try to showcase a lot of kind of not so common ones. So you're gonna even if you are a bit of a Georgian wine connoisseur or you've been exposed to a lot of different styles in Georgia, you'll probably come across some things that you've never had. And I try to intentionally keep it that way. I mean, the typical styles that we're gonna continue to talk about in this month, that really, amber, orange, highly tannic, highly extracted, that style of wine, as well as a huge, big, burly, rip your, come out with tannin, saperavi, red wines, things like that you can easily find on the market. So I try to showcase some kind of a other side of Georgian wine, a little more elegant, a little more balanced, in my opinion. I do find a lot of Georgian wines to be a little out of balance. Definitely wines that make a lot more sense with food. So if you come across any wines, I mean, this is generally true for any wine, but particularly with this month and Georgian wines in general, these are the kind of wines that make a lot of sense with food. So if things don't quite click for you, you're like, this doesn't, like, I don't understand why anybody would drink this. I recommend finding some food for you DC folks. Get takeouts from Supra. And then the wine will probably make a lot more sense for you. So yeah. Anyways, yeah, welcome everyone. We do have some new folks, so we'll go through our typical first week of the month, just so that they get a lay of the land. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, my name is Chang. That's how it's spelled, W-O-N-G, but that W is silent, so it throws everybody off. So don't feel bad about it. But that G at the end, authentically in Korean pronunciation, is the way it's pronounced. But also I respond to either or So whichever is easier, your choice. We only have 2 ground rules here at 6 Foot Wine Club. One is, so the first hour, kind of 8:30 to 9:30, is kind of an education or teaching hour, so to speak. This is where we're going to get maybe a little geeky about the wine. I'll go through some producer profile, technical information, as well as kind of a geographical information and soil types, and get kind of geeky and taste the wines through the grid as well, which I'll explain what that means when we get there. But anyways, trying to keep us on time. If you have any questions, if you could put that in the chat box or just wait until you are prompted for questions, that would be great. And then second ground rule is, we're all adults drinking alcoholic beverage. And the second half of the wine club turns into kind of like a virtual wine club where we drink wine and hang out and debrief and talk about family drama that happened in Paris or whatnot. So if when these things happen, we all come from different belief system and backgrounds, and some things may be said, or you may say something that may offend people, or you may find offensive. And when those things are brought to my attention, we're going to address it as a group. It's all coming from the place of love and respect. It's all in the interest of keeping the space feeling very safe and fun for everyone. So there's only 2 ground rules. Besides that, take it easy. This is not one of those stuffy kind of tasting things. Yeah, relax. Pour yourself a fat glass of wine. It's Wednesday. It's hump day. It'll make your week go faster if you have some wine. A few logistics before we get into the wine. Tomorrow, Case Club will go live. So all the wines we tasted last month. So these are all the New Year's Eve sparkling wines I was excited to bring to my New Year's Eve party this year. So those 4 wines, as well as some other sparkling wines and other wines that popped up during my tasting, but that did not make it into the box for one reason or another. Those will all be featured in Case Club. So look out for that email. And for those of you who are not familiar with the Case Club, it is a kind of like a perk program for the 6 Foot Wine Club members. So at the beginning of each month, you will have a chance to purchase all the wines from the previous month at or near wholesale price. The more you buy, cheaper it becomes per bottle. It's kind of the idea. But I know that you haven't tasted any of these wines from last month, but you are more than welcome to participate if you like. But that's about it for logistics and other announcements. Last but not least, 6 Foot Wine Club is committed to donating 1% of its gross revenue to an organization whose mission statement aligns with its values. And this month, I have chosen Food for All DC. If you want to learn more about what they do, or you want to donate alongside 6 Foot Wine Club, the links are right there in the chat box. If not, that's cool too, but just wanted to give an opportunity. Any questions about anything I just went over before we get into the wine? Cool. First and foremost, I'm going to apologize to anybody who speaks Georgian, but my pronunciation for the remainder of this month is going to be horrendous. So I'm sure I'm butchering it. I'm sure I'm not pronouncing things correctly, but please forgive my cluelessness when it comes to Georgian pronunciation, but I try my best. But also, I also apologize for those of you who are joining us on tasting, but I do not have today's wine with me. It finally happened. So I'm joining you from Keystone, Colorado, and then the wine did not make it here. So I have another bottle of orange wine, and I remember this wine pretty clearly. So I'm going off of my sensory memory, but it's kind of like the time when I had COVID and like I couldn't taste anything. So when we get to the actual tasting portion, I'm going to rely on all you vets out there who've been tasting wine with me for years to help guide the tasting notes for today's wine, because I don't have the wine, but I have a pretty clear, vivid sensory memory, so I think it will be fine. But yeah, just letting you know, full disclosure. So yeah, I'm actually tasting the Puente Raya. I don't know if you guys remember this Slovenian orange wine that we had. So that's what I'm tasting. But yeah, you should all have 2016. Here we go. Tchotiashvili. Khikhvi is how that last variety is pronounced. K in front, from what I understand. And for those of you who speak Georgian or understand Georgian language, let me know if I'm wrong. But from what I understand, K is at the very beginning is silent, but everything else is pretty much pronounced pretty phonetically. So the KHVI is pronounced Khikhvi. So we got 2016 Tchotiashvili. Khikhvi is what we are tasting today. So where are we? Let's start with that. Just out of curiosity, how many of you can point out Georgia on a map? Okay, all right, TC people. I know you guys are all smarter than the most Americans, but God damn it, you guys are ruining my surprise here. Okay, anyways, great. Let's look at the map. Oh, that's not it. There we go. So here's a map of Georgia, but first and foremost, let's look at this section, just in case you were wondering where the hell Georgia is. So this is Europe, as you can tell, right? Spain, France, Italy. You're pretty familiar with what's happening here. We're getting into the Eastern Europe here. And we go even further east, and then next to Turkey, north of Syria, Iraq, and Iran, right next to neighboring countries, nations of Armenia and Azerbaijan. In case you're wondering where the hell Armenia and Azerbaijan were on the world map, now you know. So this is where we are. To the left, to the west, this is the Black Sea, and to the right is the Caspian Sea. And then going north, as you see Russia, and to the east, you see all the Central Asian countries, all the Stan countries that make their appearance. So just looking at the map, this is kind of the crossroad, right? You got the European influence, you got the Asian influence, you got the Middle Eastern influence. It just kind of all converges right here. And as you can probably imagine, there has been a lot of political instability. Pretty much every civilization that has been around this region has tried to invade or has gone through Georgia. So there's a lot of kind of a mixed match of influences here, which makes it really interesting and fascinating, quite frankly. And if you never had Georgian food before, and this month hopefully will be your introduction to maybe trying some Georgian cuisine, the food there is fascinating because you see this kind of Russian influence with the horseradish and beets and pickles and all these stuff. But then you see all these European influence, the Asian, the Middle Eastern spices also make entrance. It's a fascinating culinary part of the world. So I highly recommend you guys check it out. And again, the wines, Georgian wines, make so much more sense with food. It's honestly not one of those things that's probably particularly enjoyable on its own. Though I try to showcase some of that this month, but in general, it's a food that's meant to be consumed with food. A wine that's meant to be consumed with food. So that's where Georgia is. That's where we're going to spend whole month exploring. And when you look at that Georgia more closely, these are kind of the winemaking regions. It kind of runs all the way across the entire country. But some of these names you will recognize. Some of these names you probably never heard of, and I've never heard of it either. But like things like Imereti, Kartli, but this probably Kahedi is probably the ones that you've heard of quite a bit, which is in the most eastern part right here. It is also the largest portion, largest wine producing area of all Georgian regions. So this is probably, if you've ever had Georgian wine or you're familiar with the Georgian varieties, most likely you've had a Khikhvi wines. Imereti probably as well. Imereti and Kartli make some appearances here and there, but I mean, as you can see, these are the varieties that you're working with when we're talking Khikhvi wines. And these are the kind of the Georgian varieties that are readily available in the wine market in US. But even within this, and as you can see, going all the way across, these are all probably varieties you've never heard of, right? Because Georgia is the oldest evidence of winemaking in human civilization and human history is found right here in Georgia. So they've been making wines for 8,000 plus years. I mean, millennia. I mean, this is one of the oldest wine producing regions in the country in the world. And when you've been making wine for that long, there's going to be some wine varieties that have only started here, indigenous varieties that have only been found and started. A lot of these varieties also have been forgotten. So in fact, the country of Georgia is still trying to haven't identified all the wine varieties that are found in Georgia. And we're going to talk more about that next week. Just as a preview, next week's wine, there's like more than 170 varieties in that one bottle. And out of the 170, only 140 have been identified. Just give you an idea of how crazy Georgian wine varieties can get. But, you know, some of these names, even some of these are hard to pronounce. But let's talk about Khikhvi for a second. Saperavi, you might have heard of. We have a bottle of Saperavi this month. Katsiteli, right? This is probably the one that you've heard about the most if you had Georgian wine. A lot of the orange wines tend to be made from tends to have a lot of Katsiteli as a blending majority. And then Swane, Mitswane, Kisi, and then Khikhvi. We finally have it here. This is what we're tasting today. But as you can, Khikhvi is not only rare in not all of Georgia, it's only found right here in Khikhvi. Like you don't really see it anywhere else. So we're talking about even within obscure indigenous varieties, even within that, we're talking about a very, very rare, very, very small production variety that you're going to find. So that's what you have today. But due to the big role that the wine industry plays, just because of history as well, but currently now, the role that they plays in the economy, the viticulture is tightly intertwined with the Georgian kind of national identity as well as culture. According to my research, it is the 21st largest wine producing country. It has about 50,000 hectares of vines planted, with 75% of it being white and 25% of it being red. So we're talking about mostly white country. But I want to point out two quick things about that. One, just as a point of comparison, when you get 50,000 hectares, like how big is that? Just to give you an idea, California has about 59,000 hectares under vine. So we're talking about a little bit smaller than the entire state of California, the amount of the wine that the state of California makes. So quite a bit of wine, right? As a common myth may have you believe that, you know, all these, you know, is 75% white and all these varieties are probably going to be amber/orange wines, the skin contact wines. But the truth is, that's not true. Like, in fact, the amber orange wines that we've come to really associate with Georgia is a bit of a minority. In fact, the Khikhvi region where we are this week is the home region for these kind of skin contact, extended aged skin contact wines. Pretty much everywhere else you're going to find some level of skin contact. But this Khikhvi is really the region that's known for including stems and every part of the entire 100% of the grape variety, and the stems and everything is thrown in, which extracts a lot of tannins, extracts a lot of polyphenolic compounds. So the wine ends up getting these kind of really savory flavors, as well as these really tannic structural kind of components to it. But when you get outside of Khikhvi, for example, like if you go to Imereti region, the wines, they don't use stems in their, they have skin contact, but they don't have stem inclusion when they do it mostly. And even the skins, they only use about 10% of the grape varieties that are used by weight in skin. So we're talking about much more kind of a European style skin contact, not this kind of a really tannic, big orange wine, amber wine that we've come to know Georgia for. Again, that's a very much of a Khikhvi style, and I mentioned Khikhvi is probably what's mostly available in U.S. market, and that's probably why we've all come to think that that is the typical, stereotypical style of Georgian wine, but it's not. So I just want to point that out. And they make everything from dry, sweet, still, sparkling, rosé, red, white. So yeah, every style that you can possibly imagine, it is made right here in Georgia. Wine has always been around and important in Georgia, like I mentioned, 8,000 plus years. But there were two particular times in Georgian history that I thought made wine really popular, or it really gained popularity and importance. So from the 4th century AD and on, there's a huge kind of a Christian movement that took place in Georgia. So obviously Christians and wine, the blood of Christ. So the popularity grew quite a bit in this country. And then the second came much more recent, which is the Soviet era. The Georgian wines were very, very popular in the Soviet Union. In fact, according to this little stats that I saw, Georgia ranked 2nd in terms of volume in grape production in the Soviet Union, behind Moldova, which gives you an idea of how important Georgian wines were in the Soviet Union. From 1950 to 1985, Georgia wine coverage more than doubled due to the increase in demand from Soviet Union, just to give you an idea. But then during the Gorbachev's anti-alcohol campaign, a lot of the vines were kind of cut off. But the majority of Georgian wines, even to this day, are still exported to Russia. And I'm gonna actually tap into Heidi, who probably has more knowledge about this than anyone that I know. Apparently there's been, and there has been and continues to be, a lot of political tensions between Georgia and Russia. There's in fact even a Russian embargo of Georgian wine that took place in 2006, and there's a lot of conflict and tension. But a lot of wines that are being sold, Georgian wines that are being found in Russia currently, these are kind of like a mass commodity wines that are sold at like $2.19 a bottle. But you know, I saw an interview that was done by the producer of this week's wine, where not only him, but basically his colleagues and other people are talking about maybe this kind of Russians' aggression towards the Georgian wines is maybe a good thing. Maybe this is a good opportunity for these kind of small, quality-oriented producers to kind of sever their ties with Russia, and then rely more on opportunity to grow their link with Europe and the US to kind of sell more wines, as well as sell for more per bottle than they would in Russia. But anyways, Heidi, I want to ask you if you had anything to add to that.
Sure.
Or anything else that I've said. In fact, for the rest of the month, to tell you the truth, and this is a full disclosure, I am pretty clueless when it comes, like Georgia is a huge blind spot. I've never really worked with Georgian wine. And I think that's part of why I was like fearful to put this box together, because I didn't have enough knowledge. So, you know, I'm just using it as a reason for me to explore and learn more about the country. But there are other experts out there, and I know Heidi is much more familiar with the Georgian wine scene than I am. So I'll probably point to her for some pointers along the way. But if anybody else has anything to add, honestly, let me learn, because I'm learning. Anyways, Heidi, do you have anything to add to that?
Sure. There were, as Julia pointed out, there was a war. There was an invasion and an annexation of territories in the north. And in 2008, there was a punitive embargo by Russia in 2006 and in 2014 of Russian and Moldovan wines. And most winemakers in both of those countries say it was really an opportunity for their country to sort of take back quality and style and character, because they had been over mass producing wines just for that market for so long since the Soviet Union. Stalin was Georgian. His favorite wine was Kinsmeruli, which is a very highly extracted and sweet red. So that became kind of the standard fare in the Soviet Union. And even before that, you know, in Imperial Russia, the crown, all the way back to the Catherine the Great era, were trying to invest in vines and the wine economy to compete on a global scale. So Georgia's always been very important, and they've always had they've been able to keep a lot of their character as a wine culture, but also as just like a very ancient culture and language. So I think that goes a long way towards preserving all these great grapes and these wine regions and these techniques that you see today. And I have 2 wine books about Georgia, and one of my friends is a Georgian wine expert. So I will try not to intervene, but if you guys have questions, I can look it up or I'll
There you go.
answer.
Also, if you could drop the names of those books in the chat box, that I think
Sure.
that'd be great. I would appreciate it. But yeah, again, I don't pretend to be an expert in all things. So Heidi definitely has a lot more knowledge about Georgian wines and all of that than I do. But yeah, here to learn. Yeah, and then moving on from the kind of a history, which we'll continue to touch upon. By the way, during my research, I came across, I don't know how true this is, but it sounds right. But apparently, anytime you see a word like vino, then even wine, it probably comes from Georgia. A lot of that like is the wine, the language, Georgian language in wine is I don't know how to pronounce it. Khvine. It's like Ghvine. So it basically, the world we know of it now, the wine world we know of it now, basically we owe credit to Georgia. So yeah. Anyways, climatically speaking, I mean, one of the other things is that as I was tasting through a lot of these Georgian wines, what I came to realize is actually how different, how varied this not only styles were, but also the kind of like the regional stylistic difference. And a lot of the is those climatically is just very diverse here. Not only are there altitude difference, there, there are mountains, and higher you go, colder it gets. The exposition changes and all of that, but also because of 2 seas on either side. So you get on the west, as you closer you get to the Black Sea, you get a lot more Mediterranean. It's milder summer, and obviously more going east, more towards Russia, you get a lot more of the continental, really cold front and the weather that comes in from the east. So going from west to east, north to south, depending on the altitude as well, there's a varied amount of climate that plays a role here. I also didn't realize how diverse the soil was in Georgia. I mean, we're talking about everything that we talk about in France: limestone, sand, clay, volcanic soil, granite. I mean, everything is found here as well, which makes it really fun in terms of exploring the country through the lens of wine. And Georgia also has, I also did not know this, but Georgia also has their own kind of appellation system, very similar to the French appellation system. It's called PDO. Yeah, so they also have a quality control system where they limit kind of a yield. I mean, everything from yield to how long you can put it on skins for, the minimum alcohol percentage, all of that, just like French appellation system. So wine is a big thing, it's a big business here in Georgia. It's not just something that people have been doing for a long time, but it not only does it drive the national economy of the country, but it's actually just culturally speaking, is a big part of what people identify themselves with culturally. So, yeah. Let's see. Let's talk about who makes this wine. And I don't know, Heidi, also working with Georgian wines in the past, I don't know what your experience has been like, but it is so fucking hard to find not only tech sheets, but any kind of background information on any of these people. Like, they're like, do they live in some hiding? Like, I don't understand why I don't publish any of this stuff. But anyways.
Well, it's expensive to translate Georgian, and actually a lot of the importers don't give a shit. Like, their market, the vastness of the market in Georgia and the amount of material and information in Georgia is insane by comparison to what you find in the United States. So what I have found is, and it's the same problem with a lot of these Eastern European countries, is like the culture of tech sheets doesn't really exist for their market, and so they don't really go through it for ours.
Yeah. I mean, it makes sense. But yeah, I was just asking an importer, they're like, what do you need? What kind of information do you need? Like, they don't do tech sheets. I can find out whatever information you want, but like, they don't do tech sheets. It's like, okay. But also like trying to dig up some information with the producer. I was like, where? Yeah. Anyways, so this is him. The guy on the left, Kaha, or Aka, if K is in the front, would that be silent?
You're gonna
Or would it be
laugh.
Kaha?
Kaka.
Haka?
Kaha. Kaha.
Kaha. All right, let's go with Kaha. Kaha and Ucha. Ucha is that. Kaha is the current generation of who's floating this family winery. Again, I couldn't really dig up his information. His family has most likely been involved in winemaking and for centuries and for generations. I do know for a fact that his dad and his grandfather made wine. So he basically learned just from his family. But I couldn't find any family history on how long they've been making wine, how long they've had vineyards. Maybe those records were lost or may just never been interviewed, which I find surprising because this winery is a quite well-known winery in Georgia, especially in the West. So I feel like somebody in the West, in the wine media, would definitely interviewed him at one point, but I don't know. I just could not find any information. But what I do know that what he's trying to do is that he's deeply committed to kind of reviving these kind of ancient, local, indigenous grape varieties of Georgia, particularly Khikhvi, which is a region that he's in, and producing these natural wines. Again, for these people, for these folks, natural wine is not even a term that they give a shit about. It's just the way that they've been making wines for generations, and particularly the making orange wines or white wines with the skin contact by extracting a lot of the polyphenol compounds, which serve as a kind of preservatives and antioxidant. You are able to make a lot of these wines completely additive and chemical free. So in fact, the wine that you guys are all tasting today is a 0-0 wine. There's no chemicals added in the vineyard. There's no chemicals, including sulfites, added in the cellar. And the fact that it is that kind of stable and clean is not only speaks about his farming and his winemaking, but also just stylistically, just putting the skins on is what happens. But yeah, so he only works with the local varieties, and then making it in a very traditional Georgian winemaking technique. So what does that exactly mean? In case you're not familiar with the Georgian, oh, by the way, that's Khikhvi. This is the grape variety you guys are tasting today. All the color that you're seeing on there comes from the skin contact here, as well as spending some time in the qvevri, which is what I'm about to show you right now. This is qvevri. This is like a giant, or amphora. You might have heard the term amphora before. It's essentially Georgian clay pots, ceramic wine vessels. This is above ground right now, and you can kind of see the marking here, but they're oftentimes buried underground. This is actually Kaha. With his qvevri already dug underground. So underneath this hole is basically all his skin contact wines, as well as red wines that are all basically being fermented and aged underneath the ground. That's a very traditional way of doing it. So usually what happens is for the white wines, they will usually line the inside of qvevri with beeswax. And as soon as the grapes arrive in the cellar, they'll crush it. Then here in Khikhvi region, they will add everything, pips, the seeds, the skins, the stems, and everything into the qvevri, and then they'll ferment it there and they'll age it there. Usually a minimum around 5 to 6 months, but it can be much, much longer. But you know, at minimum, usually 5 to 6 months is what you do. This wine that you're tasting today, it has had 8 months of skin contact. And I actually think for 8 months skin contact, this is actually quite elegant and really, really, really well balanced. Yeah, so this is what it looks like. And then for the red wine, very similar thing. So red wine and the white wine in Georgia, particularly in Khikhvi here, they're made pretty much the same way, except the red wines don't customarily get beeswax. And this is another kind of winery. This is what it looked like. Basically, they're burying it right now into the ground. So these are a lot of just clay pots in the ground. Yeah, so that's what we have. So this is 100% Khikhvi, a very thin skin. They were very, very popular in the ancient times, but it has kind of died out and gotten forgotten over time. But with the work with Kaha and a lot of regional Khikhvi producers, we're trying to bring this very regional grape variety, right? Because I talked about how even in obscure grape varieties of Georgia, this is quite obscure even in Georgia. So is the work of these small producers in Khikhvi region that's bringing ancient varieties like a Khikhvi back. So yeah, it's 100% organic, but not certified. In fact, most Georgian producers, they all produce organic viticulture, but they don't certify. They don't care to go for certification, or or they also can't pay for it because it's quite expensive. But a lot of the producers are 100% organic. Fermented and aged exclusively in qvevri that you saw, typically in 800 to 1,000 liter in size. That's the one that you saw. Though the qvevri, it has been traditionally used here in Georgia for thousands of years, right? 8,000 plus years. But other civilizations outside of Georgia, though Spain and Portugal, they actually have, like Spain has a Dahan or Tenaha. Portugal, I forget the exact term for it, but there's some traditional winemaking regions and styles in Spain and Portugal that also use amphora, these kind of clay earthenware winemaking vessels. But outside of that, it's been quite, it's something that became very new and exciting and very kind of contemporary and hip right now. So, and we've featured a lot of wines that have been made in amphora or Asian amphora, but you're seeing a lot of European and American winemakers and Western winemakers that are starting to experiment with qvevri. They're in fact actually importing qvevri directly from Georgia so they can use it in their wineries and figure it out. From what I hear is that just the shape of that qvevri is interesting because it's essentially what gives it that circular motion. So you have a less reason to kind of do the cap management where you're punching it down or pumping it over. It kind of, that pump over action happens kind of naturally just because the shape and then the wine moves around. So it's like a gentle extraction, which is a kind of ironic talking about, Georgian wine, which is so burly and tannic and structural, but they're like talking about this more of like an elegant extraction of these tannins and phenolics. But yeah, and another case, another big example of qvevri being very popular is Slovenia and Friuli region in Italy, where a lot of the orange wines are made, and we feature some of them. In fact, this is one of them. This is made in amphora. So yeah, you're seeing these kind of qvevri making its appearance around the globe, particularly on the west. But it has been around in Georgia for 8,000 years. So it's a very, very ancient way of making wine. Yeah, I went over what the traditional Georgian winemaking is. They all this one is all fermented with a native yeast. Again, no additives here whatsoever neither in the vineyard nor in the cellar. 8 months on the skins in qvevri, no filtering, no fining, no sulfites added here. All the tannins and polyphenolics that you get from this extended skin contact, like I mentioned, which are antioxidants as well as preservatives. So they're precisely what enable these kind of white wines to not only last, but protect them against oxidation without using sulfites. So if this was probably not, if there was no skin contact on this thing, you probably see some level of sulfites being used, but that's just how traditionally white wines have been made in this region of Georgia. So yeah, very, very natty in a way. This is why natural wine, like natty heads, get crazy about Georgian wines, because they're like, oh my God, like they're so cool. They don't use anything. Everything is 0-0. But it's like, they've been making wines this way for
They don't
thousands.
even know what they're drinking.
Exactly. Yeah, they're like, what grape variety? What are you talking about? Just wine.
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. 100%. So, anyways, any questions? Oh, there's a lot going on in the chat box.
I've just been dropping deets. I don't want to
Okay.
interrupt you, so I've just been
all
dropping
good. I
it in there.
appreciate it. Any questions? Marani, yeah, thank you for pointing that out. Marani is the word for a winery, cellar, yep.
So I've been thinking about this a little bit. Like, how does the amphora do the natural pump overing or whatever? Like, I mean, if it's, especially since you showed how they're like stuck in the ground, so it's not like anybody's rotating them or anything like that. So how does the movement happen?
That's what I've been told. I don't know exactly how chemically, maybe Heidi, you know?
I'll find it's basically as it's fermenting, things
Mhm.
are bubbling up and they will do punch down. Sometimes they will push the skins down in, but usually they leave it as a cap. But because of the movement of the fermentation, it sort of
Okay, so
creates
the
this,
shape, but the shape
yeah,
makes whatever bubbles come up or whatever. I
Yeah.
see.
right.
Okay.
So, I mean, people also have talked about, I've heard winemakers talk about using cement eggs that are shaped
Yes.
like this for the same reason. So
Yeah.
they don't have, they have to do less punch downs, it's much gentle extraction, they don't have to touch it as much. So yeah, I'm assuming this shape has a lot.
Yeah, that was what I was asking about. What about the shape makes it so that it does that? But I guess that it's sort of, I see what you're saying. Like,
Yeah,
what,
instead of like a flat ground, I guess that's things come up,
Mhm.
comes up on the other side. But I don't know the exact physics of what happens as the alcohol is produced through fermentation. That I don't know. Any other questions? Okay, so normally at this point, I would go through the tasting grid myself, just to explain how things go. But one, I don't have the wine. Uh, so we're gonna go through it like we normally do, which is each one of one of you is gonna take one section, then we'll talk about it. And next week, with next week's wine, I'll go through the grid by myself. So just so I can explain things for the rookies that are joining. So with that, who would like to take the appearance?
I'll do it since I'm not like at my very best nose or mouth wise. So just in case anybody calls on me. Although I feel like I do it all.
Okay, hold on, let me pull this up. Oh, okay, hold on. What is happening here? Okay, here you go. Oh my gosh, stop. There you go.
You need to upgrade your Adobe.
Yeah, exactly. Here we go.
Okay. Well, this wine is super clear, which I think is what you were talking a little bit earlier about how impressive it is. It's a very clear wine. I'd say that the intensity is medium plus intensity.
Okay.
Back to the conversation of like, well, what are the colors of these things? I'd say we're in the gold to amber, but does orange wine go under white or what,
Yeah. From what I remember, that wine is, yeah, how I would describe it is probably, if I were using this grid, I'd probably say like amber with an orange fleck. Is kind of what
Amber
I
with
would,
an orange fleck.
or,
Yeah.
or
Straight
orange
orange.
with an amber kind of brownish fleck in it. Is kind of what I would call it. But again, I don't have the wine, so I'll let you guys be the judge. But like, yeah, we're not calling this lemon. We're not calling this, gold. We're definitely in the kind of amber orange kind of a territory, right? Here,
Yeah.
maybe
Yeah.
definitely not fully brown, but definitely going into that. Any other observations?
Um, uh, no deposit in mine. I don't know. I haven't gotten to the bottom. I don't know if anybody has yet. Petulance, nothing, no bubbles. Yeah.
Okay, excellent. You get to pick the next person for the notes. Or because since I don't have the wine, does anybody vehemently disagree with Liz's call? It's a group effort. Or you see something different, or something other than what Liz pointed out, at least in your wine, in your glass.
No.
Okay. Hearing none, Liz, you get to nominate the next person for the
I'm
notes.
gonna call on Shannon if I congratulate her for her new job. I saw your Insta post, and so did you open it? I haven't seen you sipping.
Oh yeah, I've got it.
Okay. All right. Good. Okay. Cool. Great.
Excellent.
All right. This wine is clean.
Okay.
I don't smell anything funky. Intensity, maybe medium plus.
Yeah, I remember it being quite aromatic, quite expressive. Again, I don't have the wine, but yeah, I remember it yeah, I don't know how squarely into medium plus, but I remember it jumping out of the glass. So that probably makes sense. By the way, for this week's tasting, if at any point, if you're tasting something different, drastically different, point it out so we can taste it as a group. But yeah, all right, medium plus intense aromas of. What do you got?
I don't really get floral, maybe honeysuckle, but yeah, I'm gonna go with honeysuckle.
Okay. Some sort of like
green,
a sweet smelling flower kind of a thing.
yeah.
Okay.
It's really light in the background.
Mhm.
Green fruit. I do get apple, but more of like that yellow golden apple.
Yeah. Yep.
Maybe the same thing with the pear, like the yellow pear.
Okay. Yeah, I remember smelling some like slight like quince, some sort of like perry, quincy kind of thing. So yeah. Citrus?
Citrus. I almost get like dried oranges,
Yeah.
if that makes sense. Like
Yeah.
it's oranges, but it's not like the juicy
Yeah.
citrusy.
100%. I remember like a dry orange zest, orange peels, things like that. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Definitely stone fruit, peach,
Yep.
apricot, nectarine. When I first smelled it, I was like, whoa, this is peachy.
Yep. Yeah. And that's what Khikhvi was really known for, and that's part of why it was so popular, is that kind of aromatics of stone fruit, floral, that kind of really pretty kind of a treble note, high note, ethereal, if you want to call it, kind of aromas were very unique, particularly compared to other Georgian varieties. So yeah, but yeah, peach. I mean, like I'll say now, maybe this is a preview or a spoiler, but to me, when I tasted it, I was like, whoa, bro. Like I told my rep, I was like, this is like a Lipton peach iced tea.
Yeah.
Yeah, like to me, it had every element of that with some other things thrown in. But yeah. Tropical fruit.
I don't get any tropical. I did get something that's not on here.
Okay, call it out.
Almost like golden raisins.
Okay. I believe that's what.
Is that down below?
Where is it? I believe that is what the British call sultana.
Oh, okay.
Can
which is
confirm.
Yeah, right. Cool.
I only know that
Golden
from the
raisins.
Great British Bake Off because that is a lot of things on us.
Cool. I didn't
Okay.
know
Sultana.
that. Yeah, I don't get any red fruit or black fruit.
Yeah. Yep.
And then
Any savory note to this, like herbaceous, herbal, spice?
I almost get a like a black or white pepper.
Okay, little spice.
And oh my gosh, my kids are screaming. maybe a little bit of herbal, but I can't put my finger on what it is. But
Yeah, like it's not here, but to me, and I said this earlier, but like there's black tea on this wine. Like to me, there's like the Assam, Earl Grey, like that kind of like roasted black tea element to this wine, which is again not on here. But yeah, like really, really like perfectly balanced level of it. Not over the top, not like just a faint of it, but just like lets you know that skin contact, all of it was there. Especially that balance out between all the honeysuckle, pretty aromatic and fruit things with this like savory tea element, which I thought was really particularly interesting and delicious about this wine. But so yeah, I don't know if that's what you were getting, but I definitely remember getting that in that wine.
yeah, I kind of would almost describe it like if you're making peach cobbler and you have like the cinnamon and the sugar, like that's kind of what it like spicy or herbal.
Okay.
Not like straight up cinnamon, but just something a little,
Okay. Got it. Any stoniness?
Not really.
Yeah, I don't remember thinking it was very minerally.
Yeah.
If you guys maybe getting it. Any secondary and tertiary here?
Not necessarily secondary from oak, just that
Yeah.
spicy tea, whatever.
Yeah.
Tertiary, maybe a dried apricot or marmalade, but
Yeah, some of the fruit notes being a little dried rather than fresh. Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, it is 2016, this wine. This wine
Is
is
your okay? Mine's 2019.
Oh, did I write that wrong? Maybe it's 2019. Does everybody have 2019? Okay, so it's 2019.
Okay. Either way, that's still,
Yeah.
a little aged. And then maybe a little bit of honey.
Okay. Little honey note. Okay.
Yeah.
Excellent. Any disagreements here? Are we all in agreement? Excellent. Shannon, you get to pick the next person for palate. And good job.
Thank you. I'm gonna
And
pick.
especially tasting this through the grid, because I know we haven't had a whole lot of experience tasting orange wines through the grid together. So this is a new experience for a lot of people, including myself. So yeah, good job. Like pointing out these things is very new. Because we don't get these aromas and flavors every day. So yeah, next person for the palate.
I'm gonna pick Heidi if she's not with
All right.
child.
I am not with child.
Mine are banging on the door, so.
Mine's up with daddy pretending he's not tired. Sure, yes.
Palate.
Mm-hmm. Dry.
Yeah, bowl dry. There's no sugar on that.
Yeah. Acid, I'd say, is medium plus. It's not the most acidic thing. It's not an acid bomb that we're used to.
Agreed.
So I'd put it
100%.
closer to medium.
Yeah. I remember thinking was like, higher into medium. Yeah, I probably would have gone with medium. Khikhvi in general, again, I've never really had Khikhvi except for this one, so I don't know what the reference point, like what Khikhvi generally, where the acid level generally lands. But from what I've read and from what I've been told from the rep, is that Khikhvi is not like a crazy acid-driven grape variety. So medium.
Generally lighter on acidity.
There you go. Makes sense. So medium. Let's go with medium. Tannin.
Tannin. She's a medium plus bordering high, I would say.
Yeah, you want to go that high, huh?
Well,
I definitely remember thinking it's tanning. Like, there's no way
well, for a white wine, of course, but I mean, even when I compare it to red wines that have maceration, the level of coating, it's very fine tannin. Yeah. It's very pristine.
Yeah.
And it's not crunchy, it's not chewy, but it's long lasting tannin.
Oh, it's tannic for sure. Like I'm not trying to deny anything lower than medium, but as far as going all the way up to high, like it's like coming off to you guys as being like that tannic. Like
I leave it
to remember the most tannic wine you've ever had. How does that compare? How does this compare to that?
Well, I'll say the tan. Okay, fine. I'll back off onto medium plus because the reds from Georgia are even harder.
Yeah.
They go hard.
So I would say this is like, high end of medium, low end of medium plus. I would probably call this medium plus myself. But yeah, I remember thinking that this wasn't the most tannic of the Georgia wines that I've ever had. Right. But definitely lets you know.
And it's not the most tannic white I've had.
Right.
So
100%.
From Georgia.
Yeah.
Alcohol, I would call, oh God. I'd probably give it like a 13.5, like a medium, square in the middle.
Yeah. This one is all on you guys. I have no idea. So you guys, I don't remember. I remember alcohol not sticking out necessarily, thinking it's hot.
It is 13.5.
All right. Look at you.
All right.
So that puts us right in the higher end of medium, lower end of medium plus, but yeah, medium. Body?
The tannin drives the body.
Yep, gives you
So
structure.
I mean,
Yeah.
it'd still have to be upper medium, lower medium plus level, but there's enough acid to kind of wash you out. So yeah.
Yeah, I remember thinking body was like around medium. Yeah.
Mhm.
Move, so we don't have to talk about flavor intensity.
I'd give it medium, lower end of medium plus. Like it's
Yeah.
not other than the tannin kind of overwhelming you. The aromas are really what stand out for this wine more than
Yeah.
the palate.
Yeah.
But it's still nice. Still,
Yeah. Yeah, I'm totally in agreement with you. I think both on the nose and the palate, I remember thinking this wine was right around that, like high end of medium, lower end of medium plus kind of a territory.
Yeah.
Cool. Do you agree with all the things that Shannon called out? Is there anything else that you would add, or?
I do agree. I think your peach Lipton tea, like a very steeped, intensely steeped, or like a fruity, peachy, or even like an orange marmalade mixed in a black tea.
Yeah,
That's what this takes me to.
yeah,
But it's not so jammy. It's still kind of fresh, which is crazy.
yeah. To me, it was like oversteeped
Hmm.
Lipton peach iced tea with like dried orange zest on it. Is basically
Yeah.
what this was all about for me.
Yeah.
Which I've
Um,
never had like pretty wine like this in Georgian
mhm.
wine, any Georgian wines I've ever had in the past. And that's part of the reason why this wine really appealed to me. I think there's an
I'm going to be
incredible
a really
elegance.
nice friend to you,
Okay,
wine to wine, and I'm going to bring you a bottle from Peradze. He
love it,
makes beautiful wines, um,
love it.
like Nebbiolo level
Oh yeah, yeah. I should say this
elegance.
of Khikhvi. I've had some beautifully, really ethereal ones by Imereti and some
Khikhvi,
of the cooler regions.
yeah, is
Yeah,
it's hard. It's a mixed bag. Oftentimes they're just extracting the living out of shit.
yeah,
And the aromas sort of get hurt in the process, even though they're saying, oh, this is how we preserve
yeah.
that. So yeah.
For sure,
But,
for
um
sure.
I don't think there's anything into, I mean, I don't even get a ton of apricot on this one. I definitely think this leans towards peach, but
Yeah.
apricot is kind of where that jamminess
Okay.
feels
So
in
agreeing with a
these.
lot of the primary aromas
Yeah,
and
yeah.
flavors here.
I think
Any secondary, tertiary things?
no, I don't think this went through MLF. It wasn't an oak. Um it it didn't hang well. The I'm confused about the leaves. This is a piece of Georgian wine I've never gotten like I've never pulled on this thread, so this is interesting.
Yeah,
I could see cheesiness,
yeah,
but the tea is just so intense. It just
yeah,
I don't really
yeah.
maybe not.
Yeah, to me, it was more of the savoriness came from the tea element, not necessarily
Yeah.
the like the element. So yeah, so if anything, maybe some of these we all call that dried orange peel. So maybe some of like the food character is a little dried. I mean, we definitely talk about dried tea, so there's definitely dried component there. So maybe some tertiary could argue for that, but really, even with 2019, 5 years. Again, with no sulfites, this is 0, 0, no additives whatsoever. That is staying this clean and stable with this much freshness and primary still left on there is pretty remarkable. Excellent. The length?
Length I would give medium.
I don't particularly remember thinking the length was all that long, but I don't know if I'll call it medium plus. I don't know, but
It's
anybody
tannin.
agree, disagree?
I thought medium plus for the finish, the length.
Okay.
For the tannin, yes, but I don't.
Okay.
There's not flavor.
Okay.
For me, but it might be the temperature of my wine as well.
Yeah.
I'm trying to look up the
Everybody, you trust your own palate. Whatever
yeah,
whatever you
absolutely.
get, that's what you got. All right. So based on that conclusion, based on that observation, let's get to the conclusion. How good is this wine, Heidi? And would you age it?
Quality level, I'd say good to very good. And bonus points for a rare grape variety. If that's not good. And yeah, I would age it. I think probably because of the tannin level, you wouldn't want to age it too much longer because you're going to lose whatever fruit it has left. Although the aromas are still nice and pronounced, so you could probably get away with 1 or 2 more years.
All right, so stop it. Balanced?
Sorry, I said
You think
it
it's
all very
balanced?
fast. It's overly tannic, but that's the game.
You think tannin is out of balance here? Okay. Okay. I mean, that's a probably pretty common critique that Georgian
If we're
Khikhvi
going
21
against
make.
WSET grid, yeah, that's what they're
Yeah.
gonna say.
Okay.
I
do you
like
think
it, but
do you think it's stopping you from experiencing other things? Interfering with your experience of other things?
no, it can pull you through the evolution.
Okay.
Like you can pull through it.
Yeah. And then concentration, we call it what? Medium. Medium.
Yeah.
Yeah, somewhere between medium plus. Was it medium? I can't remember. But medium on the nose, medium on the palate. Is
I
that
thought it was
what we
medium
said?
plus on the
Medium plus
nose
on the palate.
and medium
Yeah,
on the
medium on
palate.
the nose. Yeah. So somewhere between medium plus. And then complexity. Talked about some citrus, orange peels, talked about tea,
Teas.
peach, honeysuckle, some of the like sultana, some of the like the sweet kind of a candy baked thing that Shannon was talking about. So what would you call that? Black tea
It'd be
is another one.
it'd be in the very good category. I'd say.
Yeah, medium to medium plus. Yeah, and then length you call it medium. So yeah, all across the world, landing somewhere between medium and medium plus. So depending on how generous you want to be, you can call it good or call it very good. Now, potential for aging. I mean, this is something that I thought about. Yes, I do think with tannin that there's potential, there's a body for it to age, right? Like it's not going to fall apart anytime soon. Whether all of that really pretty primary peach notes and all of that that's in there, orange zest and all of that, as it gets older and that freshness is lost and it comes with more dried fruit and even the peach gets dried and all of that. Would that be enjoyable? I don't know. I don't know. So I tend to agree with your statement, Heidi. I think this wine, though it has quite a bit of a tannin and which will mellow out with age, I think just flavor-wise, it would be a lot more enjoyable having some of that freshness left. So yeah, I would say drink it earlier than later, maybe 2-3 years. Come back and check it to see how the primary is going. But I don't see it necessarily going anywhere soon because the tannin is so high. But yeah, I wouldn't want to lose that fresh peach and tea component of
But
it.
if they have, I mean, if you can check with the importer, if they have a newer vintage,
Yeah.
that could be fun.
Yeah.
Because just seeing how those act in the bottle.
I mean,
they're
the
not
newer vintage
releasing
would just be a different vintage, like depending on what happened to the vintage, not say for aging, because they'll age it up at the same time.
Correct,
Yeah.
absolutely. And you'd get to see kind of the aging, vintage changes, but then also regardless, because they spend a lot of time in the bottle anyway, before release. So
true. I mean, Georgian wines, I mean, it's true of almost any winemakers that always tend to exaggerate how long their wines can last. But particularly with the Georgians, because there have been some Georgian wines that have lasted a very long time, just because, it is so structurally just tannic and indestructible. But flavor and quite frankly, also flavor-wise, I think Georgian is not necessarily, particularly Khikhvi region, is not necessarily the most like a fresh kind of a driven wine. It's more of a savory, structurally driven kind of a wine. So I think they kind of rely on that as almost like a crutch to be like, ours can age forever. You can lose the fruit because normally our wines don't have fruit anyway. that kind of
And
stuff.
in Khikhvi, like the culture is really intense for that. The amount of experimentation is sort of limited. Like you
Mm.
sort of get laughed out at the pub kind of situation
Yeah,
if you're doing
yeah.
anything new. Just because there are enough people still making wine the way they did
Okay.
ages and ages ago. But there's a couple of winemakers that I know of, female, that are doing things a lot different. And then that other winery that I talked about, Paradze, he does everything in 3 methods. So he gets enough grapes. I don't think he grows his own grapes, but he buys the grapes. He does them in steel tank. He does everything in equal quantities and just experiments constantly.
Mm.
Steel tank, oak, and qvevri.
Yeah.
And then just tastes and tastes and tastes
Yeah.
and tastes and then bottles and then tastes and does it like for, I want to say he does 3 different saperavi. He does like saperavi rosé, and then he does the same things
That's
with like
cool.
all these random grapes because he really wants to like his goal and his philosophy, because he comes out of telecommunications, like he's not doing this in Khikhvi. He does it outside of Tbilisi, but his philosophy is that we've got to showcase the grape in all the ways that it can be tasted and show that there are valid methods. Like each of the methods are valid, and they're all going to give you something that you didn't have before.
Yeah, that's for sure. Cool.
I found another book in the collection called The Amber Revolution as well, which is a very standard text, but if you are into orange wines, it's a good introduction to the world.
That one I do know, and that one is good. I do recommend it. I personally vouch for that. Cool. Well, how many of you guys like this wine? Just out of curiosity. Did anybody not like this one?
Like is a strong word.
Okay. Okay.
It's really
Understood.
interesting. I find the contrast between the nose, which is like very sweet,
Uh-huh.
and taste, which is like super taut and tannic.
Yeah.
Contrast is really interesting.
Yeah.
I don't know that I'm not trying with food, to be fair, but it's interesting, very interesting.
Yeah.
With a super cheesy, get like a super cheesy pizza, or I can share some Georgian recipes if you guys want. I have a cookbook. But like if you make the hachapuri, the cheese with it does cut it nicely, and the tannin and the creaminess of the cheese, like it is a nice.
You definitely
experience.
need some like cheese, some sort of protein, kind of a thing with a lot of Georgian wines. It's just so much fucking tannin.
Well, and culturally, they don't believe in serving wine without food.
Yeah.
So.
I mean, most cultures actually do. So it's a very American thing where we like drink a wine by itself. Sorry, Julia, were you going to say something?
I was going to say, well, I was in Georgia last month, and I've been there a few times, but I had not had this producer before, but I had it the last month, and I like loved it. And I ended up, I mean, I had a really good saperavi. I can't remember what year it was. But then I had I ended up bringing a bunch of bottles back. Like I think I brought a bunch of Khikhvi back.
It was so good.
But it was so funny because I was like, oh, like I found that like I brought all these things back from Georgia, and then it's like I opened our wine box and was like, oh, it's this. Like I guess it's here too.
Their Khikhvi was the one that I actually wanted to put in the box, but there was not enough stock available. But I love that.
Oh, interesting. Okay, well, I have 3 bottles at my house.
All right.
I call Khikhvi their Chardonnay. You can they have every kind of style. They make it any kind of way. It will take on whatever the winemaker wants, and it just is beautiful over and over again.
Oh, Shannon, that's perfect. Peach burrata, prosciutto pizza flatbread. That's fucking perfect. Yeah, exactly that.
I'm having it with goat cheese with peach jam on top and crackers, and it's pretty good. Yeah. But I can picture, this with the peach burrata prosciutto thing.
Some prosciutto,
that'd be very.
I have
salty,
half of that in my fridge.
Yeah, excellent.
Midnight snack.
Also, I mean, there are small number of you left here, and I know all of you have tasted Georgian wine at one point or another. So I'm not going to ask the question. I was like, how many of you have never tasted Georgian wine before? But I know all of you have tasted Georgian wine before. So,
I don't think I have.
really?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. I thought you and I had a conversation about Georgian wine before, but okay, maybe I was wrong. Okay. Well,
Yeah.
here you go. Well, here's your
Excellent.
first introduction. Glad it was good. All right, let's play everybody's favorite game. How much do you think this wine is in a retail store? How much would you be happy paying for this in a retail store?
In the US.
In the US. Yeah, in the US. Yeah. I don't actually even know how much this producer would be selling this for in Georgia. Probably ridiculously low, but 28.32, 25.30. I like that, Dave. You said this is very interesting. I don't know if I'll use the word like, but you said you'd be willing to pay, happy paying 30, but you think this is going for 25. It's an interesting observation there. 27.35, 22.24, 35.35. This wine comes in at whopping $27. I think for $27, it's a pretty good deal.
Mhm.
The
I would pay more to finance the revolution.
Well, we did like a Georgian khachapuri party at Janet's house one time, and I went to, I don't know, Wardman Wines or whatever,
Uh-huh.
and they like the Georgian wines were so expensive, like nobody's drinking them. So that's why I thought they would be $32 in this market, because I feel like I was like, all right, I'm making like something that's like only costs $5 to make, and
and that's the crazy part. Georgian wines that's the big critique that it gets for what it is too expensive, especially for American palate, who's not American consumer, we're not used to this style, cannot pronounce these things, and for it to be sold at that price, it's just like people are like, why? Like nobody's gonna buy that. Like it's gonna be hard to sell that, and it's honestly it's a bit of a challenge even in restaurant settings as well. But it's
They don't have a problem selling it in Europe at this point, though.
Yeah,
it's doing really well in Europe.
Yeah, I mean, more than ever, it's still popular. People are still buying Georgian wines more than they ever have. But I wonder about its long-term kind of sustainability, like being a market viable product that's going to stick around in the American wine world for a long time.
They're investing a lot of money in wine education too. Like they've got the free course through Napa Valley Wine Academy.
Yeah.
But they do have a problem in that they're not importing enough variety of style variety to
100%.
accompany all of this newness. And there's still not enough people in the United States willing to sort of specialize in it. It's like half the reason I have the business, but it is. And there's like over 500 native varieties, and it's like all over the place all the time.
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
I just hope the exports don't get impacted too much by.
I like that he signed every one of these bottles and numbered them. My number is 517.
Yeah, I don't know what that number is exactly, but is that it can't be the 517th bottle.
It is.
I can't imagine. He's going around actually numbering each bottle, like how many he made.
Everyone does, yeah.
Oh, that's insane. That's crazy.
It's the Georgian.
I mean, but if we're going to talk about bottle variation and where it came from, this will make it much easier to track that. To say 1 through 300 came from this, qvevri. 400 through 600 came from this qvevri.
I know a gal that's working on a project there, blockchain analysis and using QR codes to try to track where the wines all end up. And part of it is, I mean, that's not the primary reason to do it, but they are trying to get kind of that data back because of quality control. Yeah.
Actually, Shannon, I'm actually kind of mad that I didn't come up with the pairing suggestion. That's actually perfect. Now, more and more I think about it, I'm like, God damn it. That's so good. That's such a good pairing.
She's very good at this.
Yeah, no, totally. Any other questions, comments, concerns?
When you say cheers in Georgian, you say garmajos.
Say that again.
Garmajos.
Garmajos.
It's on the bottom here. Galmachos.
Garmachos. Okay.
Machos, yeah.
All right.
Stupid, drink it out of the bottle instead of my glass.
I mean, garmachos. Cool. Well,
we should have done a Supra. I should have planned one.
oh yeah, did anybody make something, eat something with this? Did any pairing work? Not work?
I made a porchetta for my birthday and I froze it when I left to go to, and I defrosted some and I had it and it was great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Fatty pork was a good
Exactly.
combo.
Fatty pork
Maybe
with this.
like roasted stuff is like totally a Georgian thing.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
But I agree, like a khachapuri would be great. I'm missing next week's call for the khachapuri. I'm sad to miss it. I'll be back for the other ones.
All right. That's what recordings are for. Cool. Yeah, like I said, I try to really keep things much more approachable this month. I try to really not go to the deep end of the Georgia. So hopefully everything, I know for some of you the tannin here was really really a lot, but as Heidi knows, the tannin in Georgia wine can get much more aggressive, like really aggressive. So yeah, hopefully we'll stay within, dialed back and appreciating the tannin and what it does. So. Any other comments? Any other stories? What's going on? What's going on in people's lives? How's the people's? I don't know. Have you guys been? Oh, question for you guys. I should have asked this, and maybe I should send an email out. Christmas. I said it in the email, but our last tasting, the 4th tasting, falls on Christmas Day. I thought it was better to do it on the 26th. I was thinking about moving to the next week because we would have 5 Wednesdays in December, but the next Wednesday also falls on the 1st, New Year's Day. So I think the best is to do it on the 26th, or I can just make a recording and send it out, and we just don't do a live thing for the last one. People can watch it between Christmas and New Year's Day. Any thoughts? Any preferences? Any rebellions?
I'll have family staying with us, but I don't know. So I can't predict whether I'll be able to make it or not.
Yeah. That's the reason I don't like to do the recordings, but like the reason I was saying is it's Christmas weekend essentially.
Mm-hmm.
Like nobody's gonna be going to work, or I don't know, maybe people still need to go to work. But yeah, I just thought nobody's gonna come on the call anyway, so why not just do a recording and you can watch it some other time? I don't know, but
Yeah, I sort of think that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I know
right?
I won't be.
I mean, the week between Christmas and New Year's is like disappear time. Like nobody wants to be seeing like they want to just be going inward.
Yeah.
If you want, I can do it with you.
Okay.
And then you'll have my references.
Yeah, do a recording
too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's actually.
But I would prefer to do it New Year's Day.
Oh, you mean do it live? Or do a recording?
Do a recording.
Yeah. Okay, do a recording. Yeah.
Would that be okay with everyone? Or do you want to do it
recording, but like so that it's available whenever that
right, but yeah, exactly. We would do the recording before Christmas, and then
let's do it then. Yeah, that's fine.
Christmas Day, and then people can watch it between Christmas and New Year's Day whenever.
Too easy.
Yeah.
And you can just say in the email you took a survey of all participants of the
the last 5 that was left. The 5 shall speak. The last
freaking ride or die.
Yeah. Hey, you snooze, you lose. You didn't stick around. You left the tasting too early. Okay. All right.
Word.
Yeah, I think that's a good idea.